and to fund that part of the proposed development. The Reserve Board itself has earmarked a couple of areas requiring expenditure, they being inadequacies in power and water supplies, which it could or would fund from its current reserves. The Board congratulates the Rakaia Rugby Club for its brave endeavour, from which the whole Rakaia community will benefit from in some shape or form. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, and probably the best, if any, questions that they're addressed after Mark's presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Mark?
Okay, on behalf of the Rakaia Rugby Club, thank you for allowing us time to give you a brief on our club plans in the Rakaia domain. We've designed a complex that will see our club into the future as we plan and grow our sport. Because we are a community-based club, we've always taken into account what our stakeholders want, but also what fits in with the community, as they will also benefit from the club activities as well. The complex design has incorporated a public amenities block, which has been endorsed by the Rakaia Reserve Board. The whole complex consists of an open plan club rooms, multiple changing shed area, and a public amenity block. This amenity facility will replace the existing facility that is there. This latter facility is why we sit here, as we seek support for it from the Ashburton District Council as part of the new upgrade with our club. Our project has so far involved revisiting feasibility study information. There's been concept plans, preliminary and some detailed designs by an architect, and a quantity surveyor report around expenditure and cost. We've also been in consultation with the building community. We've established relationships with a number of professionals regarding the build. We have involved Sport Mid Canterbury and Sport New Zealand as advisors, and also have sought and received support from other sporting groups, community organisations and groups who are all supportive of the Rakaia Rugby Club. In your brief, those clubs are listed, but I will note them. So the Rakaia Hockey Club, the Rakaia Pony Club, the Rakaia Bowling Club, the Rakaia Community Association, Salmon Run Event Committee, Rakaia Lions Club, the Rakaia School, the Mid Canterbury Rugby Union, the Rakaia Netball Club and the Rakaia Club have all endorsed what we're doing. I will briefly show what the overview looks like. There's a couple of slides that I'd like to show you very, very quickly. That's an aerial view of what we're going to build. So as I look at it, on the right-hand side is the club rooms, in the centre is the changing complex, and on the left-hand side is where the public toilet amenity will be incorporated. That's a front view of the facility. Just so there on the left-hand side, the public toilet block is on the left. So as you can see, it's incorporated into the total build and designed right from to incorporate it all. This public amenity facility consists of approximately a 40 square metre masonry building with associated entrance covenants accesses that are lines and are attached to the new rugby complex. A full QS report has put this cost at $265,000, which includes margins, contingencies, preliminaries and external fees. We, along with the support of the Reserve Board and the community, request that this part of the complex is funded by the Ashburton District Council in full. We plan to have it included in our tender process, and we'll factor the build in with our facilities. The timeline is planned for the third quarter of 2022 and completion by April 2023. So that's the Rakaia Rugby Club's first request. The second request. We also seek from the council some financial support for our club facilities in the form of a repayable term loan if needed. This is because we see it as an opportunity for the rugby community and the Rakaia community to use and enjoy as per individual endorsements letters in your brief. We would also value in-kind support and advice from senior council planning and building service staff where applicable when applying for resource and building consents, as this is on public land. A club is in the initial steps of renewing the whole footprint on public reserve land. This project aligns itself with our local authority to ensure that ensures public communities have access to facilities, etc., that are applicable at an applicable service level. We understand the financial realities that exist currently, but are well placed to deliver a strong strategy to future-proof our club and the community it supports. We have enough experience and skill to see this project through, and with the District Councils committing to and coming on board, the Rakaia community will only grow and benefit. We formally seek your support and financial involvement in this project.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the letters of support you've also sent in from your clubs and schools and whatever out there, and even Ashburton Rugby Club, Mid-Canterbury Rugby. They all help, no doubt. Just open up for questions from councillors, but I do have one. Looking at the plan I've got on my screen, is the toilet block and the changing rooms complex connected, or are they separate?
So they are separate. Sorry, just
Yeah.
that's the way it's designed there. So so that the roof's incorporated, but they are there is they are a separate sort of block by itself that's accessible to the public 24/7.
Is there a reason for them being separate? Because if they were combined, you'd probably save yourself one wall.
I don't actually. It's the way we designed it, more for like security. It's a separate building, but it's incorporated. We've got our own internal requirements in terms of amenities and stuff. So.
Yep, no, that's great. And another question: the earthquake strength of the changing rooms are there now. Do you know what that is? Just push your button, Bruce. Push your.
The current block is a concrete block structure now. It's got cracks down the joins and that sort of thing. We haven't looked at earthquake strengthening of it.
Has it been assessed for its strength, its NBS percentage?
Sorry, Neil, I can't.
The earthquake strengthening, it'll have an NBS, National Building something, and it'll have a percentage of 30%, 40%, 50% of the new building regulation. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
You don't, right?
No, I don't.
Questions, councillors? Love it.
I'm just going to ask the pony club and the hockey and squash and not the squash. Where do they go now for after functions? Have they got another rooms they go to, or do they just all disperse and go home after their games?
Sorry, just repeat the start of that question.
We haven't got this building here yet, so where do the other sports people go for their after function matches? Do they just play their games and go home, or is there an area they do?
So our club rooms are down in the centre. Our rugby club rooms are down in the centre of town. They've been sold, so we don't actually own them anymore. But that's where they used to go. The biggest problem with that is that people never used to go. And that building was relatively old as well. So yeah.
So at the moment, there's nowhere for them to go like next season.
No, unless they go to the club rooms and get in the car and drive, and that's been our Achilles heel. When there's effectively 400 to 500 people in the domain every second Saturday enjoying rugby and rugby alone, that's the group that we're not capturing.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, you two. I've got a couple of questions. First one, we've spent a lot of money with new toilets at Rakaia for the public toilets. Have you talked to management of the council at all about your toilet facilities? We've got a standard design. We built some in the Hydes Reserve, and possibly we may do it a lot cheaper than what you've actually designed. Have you talked to our staff about wanting a toilet block, and we've got a standard design? Have you done that, or are you just going to have your own design?
No, the short answer is no, we haven't talked to anybody. The reason why we've cited them there is a sewer running, a new sewer that's hooked up to town, running right past there. It's aesthetically, it's not a nice place to have it on the new building, but it serves the public best there. As far as the costs go, no, I thought that was a fairly reasonable sort of a price. Hopefully we would build for less than that, but we've got to be realistic.
Second question, what's the total cost and how much a loan did you want?
So the total cost of this facility for the rugby club is commercially sensitive information because we actually haven't signed off with our current stakeholders at the moment. We're happy to disclose that in a more confidential setting, but at the moment we probably think in a public forum this is not quite the right time. The loan is estimated in our budgets up to $150,000 if needed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you, and well done for your vision. Spent many hours at these grounds, whether it be around pony club and horses or at rugby. But just looking at the photograph, so the two front buildings will go, but is that the squash court behind the higher building that will stay?
Yes, the squash club is...
Bruce, just put your...
The squash club is currently behind the...
Good capital, which we do have.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Brown?
Just one question, gentlemen. How big is the club? How many members or how many teams? Because you've got 6 dressing rooms on the plan. So how big is the club?
So the playing group currently is about 170 to 80 registered players, and that's right from JAB to open grade. That number's probably increased more so in the JAB. That's what this whole project's around, is them, not old people like me. So that's the playing group, and there's as many if not more members as mums and dads and supporters and sponsors. So the club's around about between 300 and 400 members in some shape or form.
Yeah. So which building? This is a plan, but there's no size there. How big is the rooms? The club rooms itself. Can you fit 300 people in there, or
So the club rooms is 157 square metres. Yeah. 150 seated. Sorry. Yeah.
No, thank you. Great.
Councillors, any further questions? If not, with your permission, we might ask the CE to prepare a report on some issues and options in discussion with the Rakaia Reserve Board and Rakaia Rugby Club on the 2 items that they've asked us for, one being the funding of a toilet block adjoining the planned block changing rooms and club rooms, and also number 2 is around finances to provide finances up to 150k is what you're asking, but that figure will be confirmed with negotiations or with the CE and all his staff. Councillors, if you're happy with that? Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks. Well done. Next item of business, councillors, is item number 7, COVID protection framework. Oh, sorry. We'll confirm the minutes of the last meeting, which is on page 4. Any alterations or additions on page 4? Page 5. Carolyn.
With the point with the Three Waters and the Whakatahi type model, is it clear that we recorded our motion against the Whakatahi model? We certainly didn't record our motion against the, against the declining of the opposition to the Three Waters. Is that a clear demarcation in that minute? Because with the
Just explain that again.
well, we
Can take it if you like.
myself and fellow councillors voted in opposition to the Three Waters motion, but we, as did everybody else, but then we also voted, it was done as 2 separate things. We voted against the Whakakotahi proposition. The alternative of the Whakakotahi was our main opposition.
No, we didn't. We were supporting as an
No,
alternative.
what I'm saying is, if you read down, the councillors Cameron, Rawlinson and Wilson recorded their votes against the motion. We recorded our votes against the motion of the Whakakotahi alternative.
Oh, right. The third motion, yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if we just need to delineate that a little bit so it's clearer.
Yep,
Yeah.
I understand your point.
Thank you, Hamish, thank you.
So I think what I'm hearing is that Cameron, Rawlinson and Wilson were recording their vote against the Whakatahi model, not the first part of the sentence, which was the opposition to the reform.
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's linking those two means that the recorded could be taken as meaning you are in favour of the reform.
Okay, so we'll adjust that, amend that to clarify that, if that's what you mean. Page 6, page 7. So I'd like to move that they were the true and accurate record. Councillor McMillan, Councillor Cameron. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Item number 5 is the Methven Community Board. So I'd like to move that we receive these minutes. Councillor Latham, Councillor McMillan. Put the motion, all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Receive them. Any matters arising out of them? No, we'll move over to item number 7. Implementation of My Vaccine Passes for council facilities. Got Sarah and Tony here. This is going to be a difficult decision, councillors, but one that needs to be made today. So we'll first of all ask for points of clarification or questioning. Hamish?
Yeah, just in introducing the item, Mr Mayor, with your indulgence, the matter of My Vaccine Pass introduction is a matter of, in one respect, access to that facility for the community, and there is a consequential impact for staff who work in those sites, of course, in that they must be vaccinated if the vaccine pass is applied to the facilities. This report tries to canvass that matter in a relatively pragmatic, health first fashion, and that where there are staffed facilities of primarily an indoor nature, where we understand the risk to be greatest, we have recommended My Vaccine Pass. Where the facility is predominantly outdoor based, then we have recommended that the pass not be applied. You can all bring your own judgment calls to the merits of that, but that is the lens we have taken. We've tried to look at it one facility at a time. We have noted that in the event that council does decide to introduce my vaccine pass, that while unvaccinated people will no longer be able to enter that facility, we will make every effort to provide services from that facility to at least partially meet their needs. We use the example of click and collect at the library. So while an unvaccinated person wouldn't be able to go into the library, they would still be able to order their books and pick them up in a contactless way. So there is clearly some detriment and loss of amenity for those people, but we'll make every effort to give access to the greatest extent possible. We noted in this report that 95% of the Ashburton District has received a vaccination, and that's the first dose. We fully expect the second dose to catch up with that, obviously in the coming weeks, and to get that very high community level of vaccination in our community. We have noted the staff consultation period as a survey just for your information. That also included seeking the views of the relevant reserve boards and hall committees where those are the particular facilities under consideration. So we've tried to provide you with a range of views and information, and it's now there for us to answer any questions and for you to debate. We just note in closing those introductory remarks, Mr Mayor, that all councils across New Zealand are wrestling with this matter. You can find a council that supports any outcome here. There is no one way that councils have resolved this issue, and for every council that's applied my vaccine pass to most facilities, there's another council that has decided not to. So I don't think there's a lot of comfort or guidance in the behaviour of your peers. You can find a view that supports any argument, essentially. But we're here to answer questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Hamish. And the decision we make today is not going to be easy, because there will be people who won't be happy with what decision we make, whatever that is going to be, but need to make a decision for the benefit for the majority, I presume. Can I ask one question? How would you treat a person who cannot get vaccinated because of medical reasons, and people who are ineligible to be vaccinated because of age? Where do they fit in?
So
where would they fit in?
You can give real clarity on that, Mr Mayor. The term is my vaccine pass. So it's simple. You need my vaccine pass to get in. If you don't have my vaccine pass, then you can't enter. So you might well have a vaccinated person who simply hasn't yet got to the point of obtaining the pass. They still can't get in. So the pass is everything. And if a person with a medical exemption is able to get that officially, then they still get in my vaccine pass. So that medically exempt person will still be able to access, provided they have my vaccine pass. So it's all around the pass, not around whether you've been vaccinated or can't. If you have the pass, you get in. If you haven't, you don't.
Anyone under the age of 12 would be eligible to enter?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Because they wouldn't be eligible for a pass, but their age would determine that.
They're not eligible for the vaccination at this stage.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just a question, and it's on page 29 under financial implications through the chair. So you've just written in here, my vaccine pass may result in a decrease in revenue due to unvaccinated people no longer being able to come into the facility. But counter to that, for example, if the Museum and Art Gallery or the Mount Hutt Memorial Hall, if we decided not to use the the pass for those facilities, would they then be limited to only having events for 50 and under? Whereas if the pass was implemented, they could have, is it unlimited, or is there a maximum number for that?
Through the chair, there's multiple elements of the COVID protection framework. Mount Hutt Hall, from the perspective of a venue that holds events, has a separate set of criteria that would be very restrictive if they didn't have My Vaccine Pass at Mount Hutt Hall. There's figures of 50, I believe, off the top of my head as well. But whereas the library, the art gallery and the museum would have no restrictions under the protection framework if they didn't have My Vaccine Pass. So there is a difference between, based on the activities that they're doing.
Thank you.
Just in terms of the more general question about financial impact, of course, it's not clear to us in anticipating whether putting the pass on and restricting unvaccinated people will have a greater or a lesser financial impact than not putting the pass on and being vetoed by vaccinated people. So the financial impacts are an unknown. What we've tried to do is note that there may well be impact one way or the other, but the counterfactual will never exist. If you put the pass on, we'll never not have the pass on, so we'll never know what would have happened had we done that. So it's a bit of a clumsy sentence, but what I'm really trying to say is we won't know the financial impact of not doing the thing you don't do.
Councillor Floon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of questions. First one is under the recommendation 3B, it says that staffed camping grounds at Rangi, Huckatry and Mount Somers, a vaccine pass will not be required. Yet we go down to number 4 and we're asking the contractor to have a My Vaccine Pass at Ashburton Holiday Park. Why the difference?
Through the chair, that was the factors that we looked into. That was the size of the holiday park itself, the number or the amount of indoor facilities versus outdoor spaces where people could bring their own tent, their own caravan and be relatively self-contained. So those were the key factors. Also with regards to the difference, Ashburton Holiday Park is under a contractor arrangement, so it is their business that they operate, so there's a contract between council and them versus a campground that council owns and also operates. So there is a difference there.
The second question relates to, can different parts of the building be designated as My Vaccine parts and others not? The one I'm thinking about is the ground floor at the administration building, where we've got a public only access to it. Could that be deemed a My Vaccine Pass free area, so that it allows all members of the public, whether they're vaxxed or not, to have to get their normal services that they may require of that part of the council building?
In theory, yes. In the end, we recommended the whole building on the basis of the way in which the building operates, and that is that meeting rooms are scattered throughout the whole building. The ventilation system is all one connected ventilation system, and the staff that are on the ground floor, people who attend a customer that might come in, might have to come down from the second or the top floor to deal with those people. So in the end, we thought long and hard about a recommendation around separating it out, but felt that the practicalities of the building were such that we would be better to recommend My Vaccine Pass for the whole building. But in theory, yes.
Councillors, any further questions? If not, I'll move to the recommendation, and I'd like to take it in 6 parts instead of 1. That's Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make it clear that the report, when we updated the feedback numbers in the report, we also pulled through recommendation number 7, which was a point 32 of the report substance, just to make it clear about the implementation of that. So the online report has a recommendation 7, which I'm happy to read out if you don't have it in front of you, but I just want to make that point.
Item number 7 we don't have.
We've got, yeah.
Oh, you'll have to. Is it, where is it?
It is in Stella as a separate report, the updated version. The report is in Stella, and it includes the recommendation, which is number 7, that says that the Chief Executive will enact any decision to introduce My Vaccine Pass at any facility as soon as practicable, taking into account all operational and legal matters. That is a direct link from point 32, I believe, 32 in the report. That was in the original report. So it's just bringing it through from the substance of the report into the recommendation for clarity.
Okay, we'll still take the
Can I
in
ask a
separation, yeah, 1 to 7, Liz.
Just quickly, one more question, sorry. So this is obviously a temporary measure because it's when we're in the orange or red levels of the COVID protection framework, and you've got the, just above the recommendation, you've got the word, should we go to green, it's recommended that the Chief Executive has the ability to review and possibly remove the need for My Vaccine Passes at all the facilities. So would that wouldn't need to come back to council, that would just be something that would, once the Prime Minister announced that the South Island are green or to that effect, then through the Chief Executive we could just go straight back to normal, I suppose you could say, with that time frame.
Yeah, so the recommendation is to delegate that authority to the Chief Executive, with the view that I may or may not feel there's a need to remove it. The main reason for the recommendation to delegate that is for speed of decision, and if council is uncomfortable with that delegation, of course you could pass something different, but it was really to say if we're going down a level and we're responding to that, then we would perhaps want to signal to the community as quickly as possible if there was to be a different position, and that the easiest way to achieve that would be to delegate to the Chief Executive. You can take comfort from the fact that these delegated authorities with this Chief Executive involve canvassing the views, particularly of his executive team, and making sure that we've got some sort of robust process in the decision, while resting ultimately with the Chief Executive to resolve. But that was the intention of that clause.
Councillors, we'll start the recommendation off. Item number 1, so we'll not to move. Council receives the report. Councillor Brown. Councillor McMillan. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Item number 2. Council introduces My Vaccine Passes at the following council facilities. A, the Ashburton Administration Building. B, the Ashburton Public Library. C, the Ashburton Art Gallery and Heritage Centre. D, Ashburton District Council Chambers. And E, the Mount Hutt Memorial Hall. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Yeah. Councillor Floon. Seconded. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Floon, you wish to speak to the motion? Okay. Councillor Debate. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Today's society, so often the minority seem to overrule what the majority want. Everything seems to revolve around ensuring that the minority get their say, and quite often they have more power than the majority. For once, with over 90% of their district double vaxxed, this is an obvious case of this is what the majority want, and for once the majority will rule.
Councillor Lovett.
I can't support the mandate, especially the Ashburton Administration Building. I think that needs to come out. And I think, like, New Zealand is a democracy, and look, we've got division happening here, and I don't like what I'm seeing with the mandate, and we're all wearing masks, and you can get COVID wearing a mask or not wearing a mask and passing it on. And we seem to be having like discrimination and everything going on, and I just think the whole thing's wrong. If we're wearing protection and stuff, we've been all right up until now, and putting these severe measures in, disadvantaging some of our people, and we've got nearly 95% of them vaccinated. I can't support it.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I simplified my decision to 3 questions, which I'm going to ask you. They're rhetorical, so it's okay. 1, do we need a vaccine pass to go to the supermarket, Mitre 10, or the warehouse? The answer is no. Are there more people visiting ADC Administration Building than going to the supermarkets? The answer is no. Do we need a vaccine pass to live in New Zealand? No. I do not agree with mandate vaccine passes to public services. Vaccinated or non-vaccinated people have the right to use and enjoy all public services. New Zealand is not a communist country. New Zealand advocates for human rights around the world. Freedom to choose whether to vaccinate or not is to the individual. We cannot stop people using these services because of a no vaccine pass. Everyone is responsible for their own health. People know their own body best. They have real reasons why they make that choice. If we mandate the vaccine pass, we deprive not just their human rights, but we also indirectly putting lives at risk, as there are too many cases and reports of side effects and deaths because of vaccination. Everyone is responsible for their own health. If one chooses to receive the vaccine or not is a matter of choice for them alone. We should not create divisive community. We should embrace everyone. We are responsible for our own health. I'm voting against.
Councillor Rawlinson. Councillor Mackay, if you could put your light off.
My question's around the admin building. So if we pass this policy, how does that affect the CEO under term 7? Does that give you the ability to still find a way to, words deal with aren't quite the right words, but to deal with any unvaccinated staff that you have? It still gives you under item 7 the ability to manage that in some way?
The CEO will have to manage the staff. We can't. We can just manage what we can, decide on what we can recommend, the ways we got in front. So whatever we decide, it will flow on to what he needs to do.
But it won't, it'll still give him the ability to find a way to work with those people. That's what I'm asking.
If he can, yep. If he can. Did you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clause 7 is simply about the timing of giving effect to Council's decision. So it may be that the complications in the admin building with a variety of services, many more staff than other facilities. It may mean that I would introduce the vaccine pass at the admin building in a slightly later time to try and work through those issues fairly than at a facility with a lot less staff and perhaps only one service. So all 7 is doing is saying, Mr. CEO, you've got to give effect to Council's decision, which if this was passed, that would include my vaccine pass on the admin building, but that I would have discretion around the timing of that. But again, you can take comfort. I wouldn't read that to mean I could take 6 months. You know, I think if Council passes this, the intention is that the pass goes on. It's just a matter of when within the scope of, you know, a few days or weeks or whatever it might be in order to operationally give effect to the decision. But I wouldn't say that it means I could delay it endlessly because of difficulties.
Thank you, that's fair enough. I just didn't want to see you being penalised from having the ability to make decisions.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I support the motion, and I'm hoping that it will be only a temporary measure once and we can get back to normal at some stage, but I think especially in the case for the Mount Hunt Memorial Hall, the Ashburton Art Gallery and Heritage Centre, having a vaccine pass will enable them to run their business as they should normally do, and have more people coming into the building.
Yeah, I'm not supporting the motion as it is. As Councillor Mackay pointed out, you go to the supermarket, the service station, you do not need to have a vaccine pass. It's up to individuals to keep themselves safe. If you go to schools, the doctors, police, the supermarket, you don't need to be vaccinated, but they do. I think a penalty of losing your job because you're not vaccinated is very harsh. I don't agree with that. I do agree with keeping the public safe, and the vaccine pass can also be fraught with issues as in fraud around it. We've seen or heard instances of it. So it's not straightforward, as they say. They're building the aeroplane as it's flying, and we're mid-flight at the moment, and we'll make a decision. Whether we make the best one today, I'm not sure, but if we don't, we can always revisit at a later date if it's not. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If people vote against this, it means that the public facilities will be not able to be used. We cannot use a gym under orange if people are unvaccinated. I mean, there's a lot of government regulation in this, and I think we have to be very careful if we start making our own policy and saying personal freedoms and so on. If you look at the three colour charts under orange, there's a lot of facilities you can only have very limited numbers of people if you're unvaccinated, and it'll mean that the EA Network Centre will be virtually hamstrung.
If we don't pass this, the gym will still be out of bounds to unvaccinated people. The government has mandated that.
Yeah, that was in debate. The EA Network Centre is not part of Clause 2 of this recommendation. It already has my vaccine pass on because the gym could not open without it. So that's the one facility that's not up for decision today.
Yep. Councillor Cameron?
Can I just seek some clarification around the numbers under the new framework, please? With regards to the Ashburton Art Gallery and Heritage Centre, the public library, is there a change in numbers? If you have a My Vaccine Pass, are you allowed more people?
No. Under the My Vaccine Pass rules for council facilities, art galleries, museums, libraries, there is no change in numbers at any level, green, orange or red, that you've still got to have the literal 1 metre spacing based on the venue size. So, but there is no difference.
So staff in these facilities, as far as you're aware, will be cautioning people, please, signs on the floor or whatever, please stay 1 metre apart, and hand sanitizers available and wear your masks. Is that
those controls are all available, but the 1 metre used to be an actual 1 metre. They've said it's based on the floor size of the building to work out your capacity numbers. So that's how it's now worded.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I lean towards the comments of Councillor Mackay because what he says makes sense. But this is a case of, in my opinion, public health. If we just don't mandate anything, I get the feeling that everything else has just been a complete waste of time. Why did we bother getting vaccinated and having passes and all these sorts of things? So I actually support the motion, although I do lean towards the freedom of individuals, but I think until the matter becomes clearer and we see how this virus spreads over the next few weeks, I support the motion.
Any further speakers for or against? Councillor Bryan?
I will say yes to this motion for a similar reason. We see all over the world where it is spreading and spreading again. And every time they have to go to passes or to taking away freedom again. We don't know what's going to happen with this stuff. We don't know. We're just flying. But I think the best we can do for our community in the moment is try to keep it as safe as we can. And I think the way it's standing in the recommendation is the right way.
Councillor Floon, would you like to write a reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support the motion as it stands. I also take on board what Councillor Mackay says, and it does come back to it does restrict our freedoms. But think back to why we are having a vaccine pass. The reason for the vaccine pass is to protect the rest of society from those who do not decide to become vaccinated themselves for whatever reason. So to me, I look upon it as a public health issue, and therefore if we want to protect the majority, as Councillor Wilson says, for once the majority win, then we must pass this resolution.
I'm going to put item number 2 of the recommendation. I'm not in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Passed. Thank you. Item number 3. The council does not introduce My Vaccine passes at the following council facilities. A. The Ashburton Domain Office and Yard. B. The staffed camping grounds at Rangitata, Hakaturi and Mount Somers. C. The resource recovery parks and transfer stations. D. Community and memorial halls. E. Outdoor community swimming pools on council land. Timald, Ruapuna, Rakaia, Hydes and Mount Somers. F. Open space areas of council parks and reserves, cemeteries, playgrounds, public conveniences, camping grounds without staff, Ashburton Airport. And G. Elderly persons housing. So I'd like to move. Councillor Mackay.
I move.
Second it. Councillor Cameron. Debate, councillors. Councillor Mackay, speak
I
to the
think
motion.
I've said everything before.
I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 4. That council commences a contractual change that with the contractor operating the Ashburton Holiday Park to introduce My Vaccine pass to the Ashburton Holiday Park. So I'd like to move. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I do, as it stands.
As it stands. Second it.
I'll support the motion, I'll second it.
Councillor Rawlinson. Speakers for or against the motion. Councillor Cameron.
Can I ask a question with regards to the motion?
Oh, okay. Question.
Or we past that?
No, well, let's take on a question.
Okay. So a contractual change, so that will be, you need to put the My Vaccine pass in place. Is that what the contractual is? So what will that mean for this particular person that has a contract for operating the Ashburton Holiday Park?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we gained feedback from the contractors themselves, and that was included into the documentation given to you, and they're supportive of this, so we don't think it is going to be a significant issue to do so, but it would ensure that they need to verify all their campers when they're coming in, that they have My Vaccine passes, and all people that stay there. So yeah, it's an extra step, but then they can also promote that to school groups and the like, that their facility does have a My Vaccine pass, and they believe it's operationally the best move for them.
Councillor Brown.
Could I mention something as the chair of the Timald Reserve Board? We certainly follow that line. We support the managers because it is a business for them, and they think it is the best way forward. And all their staff is double vaccinated already.
Speakers for or against the motion? I'll take that as your right to reply, then I'll put the motion. I'm not in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Item number 5. The council acknowledges that the introduction of My Vaccine pass to members only club rooms and or facilities on council land as per a lease or a licence to occupy is at the club's discretion. Councillor Floon. Councillor Wilson.
I'll second it.
Yep, seconded. Moved and seconded. Open debate. Councillor Flynn need to speak to the motion.
I mean, it's just good. Sorry, to me, this one's absolute common sense. It is the club who does use the facility. It is the club's members who are attending whatever functions are in those facilities, so therefore it should be up to the club's discretion.
Councillor Mackay?
I totally agree, and I don't think we should try and force them in any way, shape or form into one direction, and I believe this does give them a warning, or they might see it as being forced.
Further speakers for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Against, Councillor Mackay. Recorded?
Yes.
Recorded, thank you. Item number 6, that the above recommendations apply while our district is at either the orange or the red level of COVID protection framework, with delegation given to the Chief Executive to review and possibly remove the need for my vaccine passes at all or some facilities should the district move to green level. So I'd like to move. Councillor Brum, Councillor Lovett. Debate. Councillor Brum, Councillor Cameron.
Why orange level included in this recommendation?
Primarily driven around the fact that's where we are now.
Yes. Yeah.
So we've now done it. Council's will has been expressed. It would be odd for the Chief Executive to now.
That's why I feel the whole series of the questions were sort of back to front. But
Yeah, well, anyway, that this was really saying that if something changes, i.e. we move to green, then it's worthy of review.
Mhm.
But you've just done this, if you like, at orange and red, of course, is a higher alert. So that's why that recommendation was
yeah,
made.
I can understand the red. Yeah.
Speakers for or against the motion? I'll put it. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Item number 7, that the Chief Executive will enact any decision to introduce my vaccine pass at a facility as soon as practicable, taking into account all operational and legal matters. I'll move. Second up, Councillor Brum. Debate. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you, councillors. Giving clear direction. Thank you. Item number 8, Ashburton District Council Trail Maintenance Fund. Steve, anything further to add to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to highlight that these opportunities don't come to council very often, where a trust is disestablishing itself and wishes to give us a reasonably substantial amount of money to be used for the purpose of repair or maintenance on trails. And just want to highlight that that is an issue for a lot of our community trails of trying to get money for maintenance. They seem to be reasonably successful in getting money for capital or new projects, but maintenance is the hardest of the two.
Councillors, any questions of Mr. Fabish? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item number 2 there, it's going to be distributed under the present council grant scheme prerogative, is it?
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, it would go back through the annual grant scheme that we currently run for community grants, infrastructure grants. So invitation would go out, applications would come in, would be assessed, and then come back to the full council for a decision.
Councillors Lovett.
So in our grants, we give out funding, so will this overtake that, or does it both will run in hand?
Through the chair, it'll sort of run hand in hand because there are various grant schemes that we give. Council granted open spaces, I think $10,000 for the Hakatira trails. This is for maintenance on trails only. And then the trails also have the ability to apply for the infrastructure fund or the community fund. So it just gives a much wider breadth of applications that they can do.
So I'd like to move the recommendation. Councillor Rawlinson, you moving?
I'm happy to move it, but I did have a question.
Okay.
The question was that this is used purely, all of the fund will be distributed over the 10 years. There's no fund being used for someone to manage that fund or administer it. It's purely for grants.
Through the chair, that's correct. It'll be handled through existing staff, through our grant scheme, so there is no additional money on top. It'll come into council's financial system and then just be another grant for distribution over the next 10 years or until it's gone.
Great, thank you. And on that basis, I'm happy to move the motion.
Seconder, Councillor Lovett. Open for debate. Being no debate, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 9, additional roading funds 21-22. Brian and Neil, is it? Yep. Additional road funding, the report in front of us. Question or anything further to add, Brian or Neil? No. No. In the report. I do have one question. In the low cost, low risk, you're not going to do those projects this year. What are those projects you won't be doing?
To do the ones that are earmarked in the appendix as not approved or declined.
Oh, yep. Yep, saw them. Yep.
So that can change, and it'll be at a little bit of discretion of council and ourselves as to which we may or may not do, and provided we can get that past NZTA.
Right. Okay. Lynette?
I was just going down the Racecourse Road footpath. It features here several times. I'm just trying to work out, is it not going to be done or is it going to be done?
The short answer is yes, it will be done, but not this financial year. We're being held up a little bit by, well, not held up, should I say, but we're cautious of the fact that EA Networks want to underground power in the area, and so we're not wanting to do the work until that has been done. So it's aiming at this stage at year 3, the program from here.
Okay, because I can just see a lot of backlash from all the people up Racecourse Road, and with all the subdivision going on up there and kids on the road with trucks, it's not a good mix.
It's also not a good look putting footpath down there, ripping it up to put a power cable in. It's good cleaning. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm not in favour of all the low risk cost improvements be put off, because once you start that, you start sliding. And for public relations, if we say we're going to do a footpath in 22-23 and we put it out to 23-24, it gets a bad look for the council, and people wait anticipating footpaths in our long-term plan. And I'm relying on the roading team being able to shuffle things around so that what they consider are very important footpaths or curb and channeling or something like that, put the priority that you think is the best use of the money, that we still keep some in low cost, low risk improvements. We are borrowing already, aren't we, to cover some of the extra cost in the flooding. That is correct, is it?
My understanding is that the flood money hasn't been decided at this particular point in time, so I'm not sure whether we're going to borrow for it or what we're going to do.
Isn't that number 3, the council funding the roading emergency works? We're redirecting 582,000. Item number 3 is the emergency works.
Yes, sir.
You push that.
What I'm saying is it hasn't been decided yet as to what's going to happen with the funding, so I'm not sure, but the recommendation is there. to either borrow or use some of the funding that we're getting from the lack of work, if you like, on the LCLR projects.
And the bit that's missing is coming from the disaster self-insurance reserve.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Councillor Miller?
Thank you. Through the chair, just again, because I didn't understand. So anything that's has been declined, is that declined for good, or will that roll over to the year 2, year 3? I'm just looking at the Dry Creek flood mitigation, and I know that was something that the Mayor and I went and had a look at, and I know we'll get a phone call again, and it would be good to say it'll happen in year 2, year 3.
What we've done at this stage is endeavoured to pick what we consider to be the better projects. We're waiting on council's decision, and if council thinks that other things should take precedence, we would look seriously at getting those in place. For example, the footpaths that Councillor Stewart has just mentioned.
Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering whether you can clear up a little bit of confusion in my simple brain. Recommendation number 3, it says the balance of 961,793 is to be allocated from the council's disaster self-insurance reserve. And when I was looking at the annual report this morning, that is in quite a healthy shape at the moment. But if we go to the bottom of page 45, clause 34, it says that the 961,793 is going to be loan funded. Is it going to come from reserves, or is it going to be loan funded?
The recommendation is to come from reserves. Again, it's council's decision as to where the actual money does come from.
Yeah, if I can add, the one you're referring to is option 1, and we're recommending option 2.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, good clarification. Councillor Flynn's done. Any further questions, councillors? If not, someone like to move? As is. Councillor Latham, Councillor Cameron. Open to debate. Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, partly of what I'm going to say is on topic and the other's off topic, but Mr. Firth always does a runner occasionally. I noted that Councillor Wilson earlier on in asked a question, and Mr. Firth quite rightly said it had not been decided. It is in the recommendation here that we're going to vote on right now, and I will be voting in favour. But that's how Mr. Firth has operated. I have always found him to be very precise and very accurate. And I'm actually going to miss him being around here, seeing that this is his last meeting today. And Brian, I'm saying this now because you do a runner straight after your items. Thank you very much for the advice, whether I enjoyed it or not enjoyed it, that you gave me in my tenure here. It's always been much appreciated, and all the best. I recommend that we vote in favour of the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay, and for those kind words from Mr. Firth, who is retiring at just before Christmas, and wish him well in his retirement. So I'll put the motion now. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Brian, and good luck for your future fishing expeditions and golf and all those sorts of things. Item number 11. Health Fluoridation Drinking Water Amendment Act 2021. Oh, yes. Yeah, without going past it. Here we go. 52. Number 10, Stockwater Race Closure. Neil, anything further to add?
Yes, through you, the Mayor. This is a stock water race closure application that we've had for several months. The applicant has been trying as hard as he can for several months to get approval and get consent amongst all the property owners on this section of Stockwater Race. Of the 19 affected property owners, 17 have consented. The remaining 2 we've looked into, and the 3 properties owned by the one owner do have some form of water supply. And the other one, the applicant has approached and offered to supply water to that property, which has been declined. So we're now in a position now where it needs to come to council to consider whether we proceed with closure. We believe the guidelines have been followed, and the applicant has done everything in their powers to try and make this happen.
On page 59, appendix 1, the race to be closed is the red dotted line. Yep.
That's correct.
Right, thank you. Councillors, questions? Mr. McKean? I just have one. When would, if we decide to pass this recommendation, when would the closure be effective from?
As of today's date.
Thank you. Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The person or 2 people who objected, what actually happens to them if we pass this? I know there's 17 in favour and 2 against, but what happens to those people? They won't accept water from somewhere else. Are they just left to look after themselves? What happens there?
That's correct. They will be responsible for getting water for themselves.
Okay.
If they do require stock water.
Thank you.
So the map on page 60, it's in all different colours. Are they the 2 on that map that are not? So which ones are they?
Right. So the one is the orange one. The lower highlighted orange one. That's the one that the offer was presented to provide water supply. The owner of the 3 properties are the 3 coloured ones further up. So the blue, red, and green is the one property owner of those 3 properties.
Oh, the 2 affected owners are in that whole block.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. Questions, Councillor Cameron?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understood that when I read the report that all 3 of those properties have had access to stock water or wild water, even if the race was to close. Is that right?
The 3 neighbouring properties do currently have water.
P in 15660 does not. That's a
yes,
question.
that's correct.
That's okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Mackay?
I wish to make a statement.
Oh, question time at the moment.
Okay.
Someone like to move the recommendation?
Mhm.
So love it. Yeah. Second it.
Second it.
Councillor Rawlinson. Open for debate or statements.
Mr. Mayor, as all councillors know, I'm in favour of keeping the water in the Ashburton River, thus the closure of water races. Mr. McCann had a discussion with me some months ago, and I believe it's not a pecuniary interest, so that's why I didn't say at the beginning of the meeting. But on reflection, I believe I'm too close in what advice I gave a particular resident of this district, and I feel I am conflicted and will not be voting.
You're declaring an interest? Conflict of interest?
I'm declaring a conflict of interest because I perhaps interfered too far on the suggestion of a staff member.
Okay, so you'll refrain from debate and decision. Thank you. Councillor Floon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support the recommendation. It is damn nice to actually finally tick off a stock water race closure around this council table, particularly one the length, which is I think is 9 kilometres by my simple maths. And to me, I'd like to see a lot more, but at least this is a start.
Further speakers for or against? I'll put the motion in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Neil. I think don't go anywhere. Oh no. Page 61. Ewan, welcome. Item number 11, Health Amendment Act 2021 regarding fluoridation of drinking water. The recommendation is just to receive the report. Is there anything you want to add to the report?
Councillors, it's just to inform you of the implications of the introduction of the new Health Amendment Act. Really, so that's just as it's read. Any questions, happy to answer.
It's been taken out of our hands, isn't it? We used to make a decision on that, now we don't. The Minister of Health does it, so informing us of that.
That's correct. The Director General of Health can now direct a local authority to fluoridate a water supply.
Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Have you any idea, Neil, how quickly they're going to ask us to fluoridate, or has that sort of not been decided yet?
Yeah, I'll answer that. We have no idea. No indication of what the Director General may do, and no indication of any timeline on when he might do it. We're completely in the dark on what may happen.
Could be a 3 waters decision.
Ministry of Health decision.
They possibly will wait for the reform to be further along, but I couldn't possibly comment.
So I'd like to move if we receive the report. Councillor Cameron, Councillor McMillan. Further discussion, debate? Put the motion on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Item number 12. Civic Art Collection Management Policy. Welcome, Mel, Sharon and Tony. Clarifications or anything further to add to your report?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Councillor McCameron.
Just a question to the Chair. I note that acquisitions, local or a significant part of a local context before we purchase or commission or whatever we're going to do. But what about gifting? How does that include? Do you accept all gifts? Do you have a rule on if people gift you art or sculpture?
Thank you, through the chair. So we had quite a robust discussion around gifting, and the way in which we landed with that was, what section is it covered under? Sorry, I'm just getting to the right section in the report. Yes, it was under 4.3, was that the Art Gallery Museum Director will actually have the ability to accept gifts or not based on the criteria that's set within the policy. It's just to ensure that we do add valuable items to the collection and that we don't end up with a collection that may not be so relevant for our community in our district.
Point of clarification, can I ask a point of clarification? Through the Mayor, if somebody donated a work that was not, didn't meet the criteria of acquisition, like local or depicting a local image, what do? Do you say no thank you, or do you accept it and sell it, or do you give it away to somebody else, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the best practice in that regard is to decline the gift, and it just goes back to the donor. So we wouldn't accept something that we weren't intending to keep in perpetuity.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, through the chairs. Following on from that, so the gifts that the council has received in the past from the sister cities, a little, I suppose, trinkets, whatever, so are they automatically accepted and do they go into this collection, or is that a separate part of the collection? Some of it's artwork, some of it's not, obviously.
Thank you, through the chair. So we had another robust discussion about that as well. Right now they're not included within our civic art collection, and that's something for Shireen and her team to look at and to consider if they are of value to bring into the collection, and they may not be. They may be best just to be left as gifts that we've received from those relationships.
I just have a question on number 3, display of works. And you've taken the council out of the discussion or the decision. where previously council was involved in the discussions with the art gallery and museum director, which is fine. You want to take council out of that decision. Why?
I think the difference now is that as the new art gallery and museum director, I'm employed by you. So you've got me in-house. Yeah.
And the same would apply for outgoing loans.
Yes.
Was the Finance and Business Support Committee, but we no longer have one. Same reason.
You have my expertise at your beck and call.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have. Councillor Cameron.
More questions. Do you have? I think there's a budget in here for acquiring. Is there? I think no. Did I see that somewhere, or did I make that up?
Thank you, through the chair. So we've discussed that at the workshop with regards to this. So this is really just the policy. Sorry, this is just the policy around the civic art collection. And Shireen may be seeking some budget through the annual plan budget process.
Is there a minimum number or a number of items or number of sculptures or number of paintings that is ideal in a civic art collection, or what? Are you just going to let it lie until something comes across the table, or how is this going to be sort of managed? I see you de-acquisitioning some works, yeah.
Yeah, so through the mayor, there is no minimum or maximum number. Collections grow based on resources and a commitment to have them grow. So at the moment, I think that the plan really is to maintain it, and that's why the policy kind of allows us to do that work. It will really depend on how much you would like to put aside as part of that annual plan process, of how, if you would like a set amount put aside for acquiring work versus just the maintenance of the collection.
Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Floon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought the idea of modern day rules, legislation, whatever, was to simplify things. Number 5, we've got de-accessioning. Now, that is certainly not bloody simplifying things when you just want to get rid of something. So could it not have a simpler term applied to it than de-accessioning?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, de-accessioning is just the umbrella activity of how you formally remove an artwork from a collection. So I think the best way to explain it and why it is complicated is that the intention of a public art collection is that once an item enters it, we are custodians of it for its entire lifetime, and in perpetuity means for our lifetime too. So the process of removing something from the collection has several steps in terms of best practice. It's not as easy as just putting it on Trade Me, I'm afraid. So there's a lot of steps involved in removing an artwork from the collection.
I understand that, but there must be a simpler term.
In terms of just the words de-accessioning? Steve might have an idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to answer that question, you could almost say it's trade talk, but it's exactly the same term used within the museum sphere for their collection policy and their collections about when they want to take something out of the collection. So within the industry, everybody knows that term and understands it. But as Shireen said, there's a lot of steps you've got to go down before you just take something out of either a museum or an art gallery collection.
Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Lovett. Councillor Brown. Any debate? Nope. Put the motion in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, ladies. Next item, number 13, Ashburton District Demography, that's better, and positive ageing. Mel, Tony, anything further to add to the report?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Cameron.
Okay. I've got lots of questions. I've got 4 pages of questions. Can someone else?
Anyone else have a question? Well, we're waiting for Councillor Cameron to collate her numerous questions. Stuart?
I've got one, I'm just finding the page. It's got the income available for people over 65 on page 101. Medium average income. 65 years and over. That's a single superannuation. Is that the way every strategy is, just on single people, is it? I mean, there's 46,000, is that the average single persons in our district, and taking all the people of wage earning age, average 46,000, whether they're in employment or not? Or how do you work those figures out, or who works those figures out?
Thank you, through the Mayor. So yes, that's come from Statistics New Zealand. So what they do with that does include every single person in the district, whether they're working or not, Councillor Wilson. And the median, they do a median rather than an average to find the midpoint, because when it comes to income, it's considered best practice to use median rather than average, because it can be pushed up or pulled up by your very highest earners.
Well, supplementary, that means that people in this district over 65, not one person has any supplementary income, because 22,000 is the basic superannuation for a single person.
That's per person for a couple.
No, that's every person over 65.
No, sorry,
the medium is 22,000. What means that nobody has got any extra income in this district rather than super.
Through the Chair, sorry, just to clarify how I've explained that. If we think of everybody who's over 65 standing in a line from what they earn at the lowest end to the highest end, it's the person right in the middle of that line. So yes, there will be people that are earning over that with supplementary income. Likewise, there'll be a lot of people who don't as well.
People underneath. Nobody under 65. It means that nobody, to me, nobody 65 should be earning less than superannuation. How can you if are they not collecting superannuation?
Through Mr. Chairman, the median is just a statistical reality. For example, if that's my understanding of national super, is a married couple doesn't get twice the single. So there's two people getting less than that. So the median is just the mid person. It's not an average. It doesn't imply anything other than the median.
Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
I think, though, Stuart makes a good point. It does highlight the lower income that most older people are living on, and I think regardless of whether, you know, the semantics of whether it's in the median or the mean or whatever, it shows you that a lot of older people don't live on a lot of money. When I looked at in the report, in the first, not actual, in the report on page about 77 on Stella, it talks about the long-term plan gives consideration to older people, and that's a big part of the rationale for the decision making with regards to whether we develop an older person's policy. I did a little bit of a search through the long-term plan, and I found 14 references to elderly and 13 references to older. I think elderly were all in elderly person's housing, and older was in shareholding or something. So it may make an implied reference in the policies in the long-term plan, but it is not an explicit reference. And I think, as we've heard on multiple occasions from the Chief Executive, words matter. And I think we need to be clear as to what we're referring to, because even though in, for example, the footpath and the walking strategy and all those strategies, it's implicit that we care for the older person, we actually only get their feedback if they contribute to the development of the old long-term plan through consultation. And I don't necessarily know that that is always the case. And the point 10 talks about research undertaken. I would like to know what that research is, please. When I read the document in here, it might be page 10 or point 10. Please advise research undertaken.
What page are you on?
Oh, well, it's in the report.
Need a bit more clearer than that.
Well, the report writers will, I'm sure, be very familiar with the report. I can find it.
Thank you, through the chair. So I think we're referring to on page 77 of Stella. We've asked the question, do we have a problem? And on point 14, we've said that based on the research undertaken, that we're not convinced there is a need to develop a positive ageing plan. So that's based on the desktop research that we did, as well as the statistical demography research that we did in the background report.
Can I ask you another question? Did you approach Grey Power or WINS or social services to seek feedback? Did you approach the EA Network Centre or the library or the retailers down the town with regards to access to businesses to seek feedback?
Through the chair, no, we didn't. We wanted to get guidance from council before we went and spoke publicly.
Okay. I have some more comments, but I'll let somebody else.
No, you please get yours out of the way.
No, I've got a lot of comments now, so
comments,
I'll leave them to the comment department.
Okay then, no more questions, that's good. Councillor Lovett.
I was going to ask, talking about the youth here, we used to have a youth forum, and that doesn't feature anywhere anymore. Is that going to be on the agenda as part of the youth part of communicating, or?
Through the chair, yes, we did used to have a youth forum. I think it comes down to timing and trying to fit that in, and I think COVID has certainly thrown a few spanner in the works with that in the last 2 years. I don't understand that there's been a clear direction to move away from that, and it could well be happening again in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to see that reintroduced, and the YMCA wasn't kind of mentioned in this because they're a big part of our youth as well.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. I was going to ask if you did contact Senior Centre and all the elder-related groups that are there, but obviously the answer was no at this point. And can I make a comment as well?
Yeah, go on.
I was in favour of having this report done, I must say, but having read it and having quite an involvement at the Senior Centre now, I agree that we receive it, but I think the elderly are fairly well catered for in our district. There's certainly many avenues of help for them if they need it.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and I'm just probably the same as Councillor Rawlinson, and did think that this would have been a good idea, but agree that we are well catered for. But going back to Councillor Lovett's about the youth forum, maybe we could also have an aged forum where we get, because there's a number of different clubs like Grey Power and Age Concern, Senior Centre, etc. Maybe they could have their day to come in and talk to us about things that matter to them as well.
Councillor Cameron, questions still?
What we have.
Would you like to move? Would someone like to move? Councillor Rawlinson?
Yes, happy to
Seconder. Councillor Lovett. Open for debate. Councillor Cameron.
I don't think it's a matter of whether older people are catered for or not, because of course they are catered. Like our community, we have a lot of voluntary organisations and a lot of support. It's a matter of whether the council takes on board the particular needs that are unique to the elderly and implements them in the policy. So I think we're a little bit misguided when we think of the catering aspect. No one is denying that older people have support and services if they need them, but are they implemented in our policies and strategies? Are they implemented with regards to transportation? Well, no, because we don't have any public transportation. And we understand that older people often lose their licences, so they get social isolation as well as actual practical considerations around that. Older people have less income because they're retired, so they don't have the means to earn. Do we have access for people on less income to access? I mean, I know in the EA networks we have a reduced rate, but do we have services and support around that? Do we have, with regards to health, our job is to advocate for health in the community, not to provide the health. But are we doing that adequately for our older people? Well, I suggest there are gaps in that with regards to waiting for cataracts or hip replacements or whatever. Are we doing a good job on that? Do we measure that? No, we don't. Do we need an older person's policy to reflect all that? Well, I think we do. Health and safety, in our older person's accommodation, we're looking at safety. Are we doing a good job of that? Well, we don't know. There's a whole lot of things. We have an obligation, as I've said before, under the Local Government Act, to give consideration to economic, social and environmental and cultural well-being. So are we doing that? Given that older people live longer, live on less, have more isolation issues, have more health issues, and have considerable transportation issues. So I think we need to think more widely, not what who is catering to the older people, because there's a lot of Meals on Wheels and there's a lot of things like that around, but what we can do to make sure that their needs, the needs of the older person is represented in their policies. For example, the CBD is beautiful, but we're down 46 car parks. How does that improve the access of the older person to the CBD? Well, we've heard around the table they have to walk. Well, older people sometimes find walking challenging. Have we reflected that in our consideration? So there's a whole lot of things I would like us to bring into a network and put embedded in our policies. And I do note that Timaru District Council, I think I just read online, were introducing an aged policy. I think it was in September 21. Was that through the chair? Was that right, Tony? I think that's what I saw just recently. So I'd like some consideration. I mean, I respect the wishes of the council, but I would like you to consider carefully what you're actually agreeing to when you say no with regards to having an older person's policy. Thank you for listening to me, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, can someone please remind us of what the Council Health Committee used to do? And could someone please describe total mobility in answer to some of Councillor Cameron's well-researched questions?
I think we're past question time, but we understand where you're going from. I think we know what they do. They look after the elderly. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree with Councillor Cameron in a lot of ways. Like our CBD, did we look at how the footpaths were set up and the pedestrian crossing was set up for people with mobility scooters and all that sort of thing? And I know on the corner of the main road and Moore Street over here, there's where you go through the gutter, they've actually tipped over a few mobility scooters. So I can see where Councillor Cameron's coming from. When we do a lot of what are just normal policy things, we should perhaps look, is it going to be suitable for people that are disadvantaged or got wheelchairs or so on? So I guess in this we say no, we just hopefully when we do development that it is included for people with disabilities and things.
Councillor Mackay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this council no longer has a health committee, to my knowledge, and I don't believe that most of the councillors know what total mobility is. So that leaves me in a dilemma that maybe we probably do need a positive ageing policy.
Plan it, say. Okay, Councillor Cameron.
Just one more remark. I note that the report, and I asked the officers, did we interview particular groups that represent the older person? Even when we're generating the report, we didn't acknowledge the older people in the report. So I think that says a lot.
Councillor Rawlinson, before I go for right of reply, which it will be if you speak, Councillor, do you think there's some information missing out of the report which you want more information? Or is there enough information here to make a decision today? There's enough information? Councillor Rawlinson, right of reply?
Yes, and firstly in my right of reply to Councillor Mackay's comment about total mobility meets here every second month. It's funded by ECAN and it has representatives from various health and other community organisations in this community that all come together, and there's budgets, there's reports, and each, like the taxis for instance, come along and report on, you know, how many mobility passes that they utilised in that past 2-month period, and they categorise out the different levels of disabilities and whatever that they carry. So there's a lot of agencies there that are represented, and if people want to get their mobility cards through that facility, they can apply through that. Okay, but yes,
It's just on that point. Are those minutes of that come through council?
I don't think they do because they're owned by ECAN, controlled by ECAN.
Yeah. So perhaps that's a councillor report to council.
Okay, just to add to that, in the comment about the over 80s, now that I know over 80s who love our CBD now because they know they can park for twice as long as other people. And some people that I'm associated with, and one's very disabled, they like it because they love the new way that they can get around town and where they can park.
Have we developed a sticker yet for the over 80s for parking?
No, we haven't. That's coming to
They
us in a
shouldn't
report for
park
next year.
double the time yet until they get a sticker.
These ones happen to have a disability sticker as
Okay,
well.
right.
Yeah. So yes, so back to yes, there's many things that we do cater for. I think around the health side of it, we're not the DHB, we're not the hospital, and I think other sectors of our community have responsibilities to the elderly. It's we're here to make decisions and be the enabler for other people, but through the health board, which I know doesn't always perform well, there are a lot of other providers in our community for the aged. So you could spend a lot of money doing more research, but it's a bit like the work that's done out of Safer Communities. That was another comment about falls and things. There's a lot of work done through the Safer Communities group around the elderly as well. So I think even though I was in favour of this being done and have appreciated reading it, I think that they are reasonably well catered. Well, it's not just catered to, the facilities are there. Sometimes maybe they need some direction as to how they use them.
Okay, thank you. For the right of reply, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? 1, 2. Do you want noted? Yes. 2 noted. That passed. Okay. Item number 14, communications policy. Rachel, welcome. Anything further to add to your report?
Thank you, through the chair. I will just draw your attention to the main change in this policy, and that is to introduce response times for officers. We are aware as officers that there have been concerns raised in the community regarding council getting back to people, and we want to include target timeframes now so that when people contact council, we can give them assurance that they will be contacted in a certain time. We have two time frames in there. The first is acknowledgement. So as soon as someone gets in touch with council, we expect that they will have their concern acknowledged within 2 days. The second is a response. Normally we will aim to provide this within 5 days. However, there are obviously issues which will require more work to be done and probably a longer time frame than the 5 days expected. These timeframes are targets, so we will, as officers, be doing our best. And if we are unable to meet the timeframes, then we would expect that the officer contacts the person and says, sorry, I can't get to it this week, but I will be looking at it next week. We consider these timeframes as reasonable and realistic, and is about probably the minimum that we can provide. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Hoyt?
Can I move when ready?
When ready, you can. Questions, councillors? Councillor Cameron.
Approximately how many responses how many emails does each department get? Like hundreds a week, or thousands, or 20?
Through the chair, that will obviously depend on the time. So during when rates are going out, there's obviously a lot of inquiries coming in. Our team in particular doesn't often speak with members of the public frequently, whereas more service-facing roles obviously will, so it varies amongst the teams.
So when I look at this table provided with regards to response rates, some that would presumably be in some departments could do significantly better than that, given that they may not get emails very frequently and given different times of the year.
Yes, that's correct, but it would depend on the complexity of the question asked. You'll see in the report that I've also included the service request response timeframes, and those are detailed in the long-term plan, and they will remain and are excluded from the policy.
Councillor Floon.
So perhaps that answers my first question. Open spaces failures and requests and cemetery failures on page 109. That's 10 days. That's in the long-term plan, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Second question is, we're bringing in all of these response times and that sort of thing. Will that be reported back to council during activity reports, or how will we know how these responses are being monitored.
Hamish?
We could not do that at every activity report. We actually do get thousands across the business. So the best we can do is commit to this policy. We want to do better, and is probably from time to time do a snapshot or a review at a moment in time of how we're going. But to monitor every single email would probably double the staff of the council. There's a lot come in. What we're trying to do here is acknowledge that making an inquiry of council and not hearing back is not good enough. But as Rachel rightly says, it's a target.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Page 114 of the policy, 4.4. I disagree with the bottom part. If you're approached by the media, I'm not going to advise the communications team and then be told what I'm going to say or not say. If you're rung up as a private citizen, I think you're entitled. I thought we were entitled to pass our comment without going back to the communications team.
Through the chair, so the policy states that it is recommended that elected members advise the communications team of any interactions, and that is mainly so that a council-wide perspective can be gained on the issue, and perhaps there are links to council, but in a private capacity, you're only recommended to advise the team, you're not required to.
I've got a comment. The other question is, why are the staff always used as spokesperson for most things that the council are doing? For example, if we had something about safer community, Liz could be the spokesperson rather than the management. We got to the art gallery, Carolyn could be the spokesperson. If we've got a news item, it's good for the public to see the council is involved in things in the district and not just Hamish and the staff. Like Neil always seems to have all the roading in Three Waters, it's always some staff member saying this is we're doing this, we're doing that. The councillor seems superfluous to what's actually happening.
The mayor has got a comment about things. He gets contacted quite often. But Hamish?
Our general approach, councillor, is matters that are operational, in fact, are for the staff to answer. And so where we are trying to draw the distinction is policy, strategy, that's for council to speak publicly, but matters operational are for staff. So announcing, some activity-based thing that's already approved in a budget by council, we would say that was for the staff rather than the councillor. One of the issues we can further explore is how often at the strategy and the policy level we might utilise councillors instead of the mayor. We do tend to say that where the elected member or where the council perspective on a strategic issue is expressed, we do tend to use the mayor. But where it's an operational matter, roading or anything else, we would say that is a matter for the general manager.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a question about digital communications, including social media. And I know that we all see the posts on Facebook, and quite often we'll see comments that have been made. So I know council don't respond to those comments, but obviously if someone messages the council Facebook page, they'll get a response similar to as if they have emailed. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. So we have the ability, customer service has the ability to respond to direct messages that comes through our social media channels. We believe it's an extension of our customer service offering. And so if we receive any inquiries via direct message, via an inbox message, and primarily we're seeing a lot of that activity through Facebook, our customer service team has visibility over that and they do respond.
So they can respond to comments that are made on that Facebook post.
There's a distinct difference.
Yes.
In my terminology. So direct messages is private messages that are sent to us at Ashburton District Council. That does not include comments within the timeline thread. So we do not actively respond to comments on Facebook.
Yep.
We do monitor it. So again, it's just very specific to the direct messages we receive.
Understand, thank you.
Just one question. It's on page 129 of our Stella. It's Appendix 3, Governance versus Management. And under Management, on the second bullet point, it involves contractors, consultations and other, etc. And that's for staff to reply to. Would consultations also not be up in the governance role as well? To respond to as well?
Thank you, through the chair. I guess the way we do it in practice is when we are responding to a matter that we've had out for consultation, as you'll know, it ends up being generally the mayor's signature on the bottom of the response letters for those consultations. So they are generally in relation to a policy, a bylaw, strategic planning or the annual budget, which is covered under governance.
Covered under this bylaw decision, strategic planning and annual budget. So it's already covered under.
It's covered under that.
Okay. There we go. No, it's good. Caroline.
I just want to go back to page 114.4.4. Any elected member may, in a private capacity, engage with the media. Well, thank you very much. I would expect that would be the minimum. But then it's implicit that in any other position in a private capacity, we have to go, to Stuart's point, back to the communications team of the council. What happens if we don't?
It's not have to, recommended, may.
But it is recommended that it's implicit though. If we may in a private, it's basically
keeping them informed of what's being, what you're talking about, so they are aware of what you're saying, so they can reply if need be. Ruben, why would it be good for that?
Through you, Mayor, oftentimes we're here to support councillors, and so we are aware sometimes that the media is working on a story. We might already have insight, we might have already done some research, we might have already contacted the appropriate teams within council. It's just a matter to offer that information to councillors so that they're well prepared when they have those interactions. Again, it's a benefit for you to take advantage of our service, but not a requirement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. One more question, if I may. Going back to the Facebook point that Liz raised, if there was a blatant untruth in the timeline, under the district council, and they said there was 30 people today at the council meeting, can you address a blatant untruth? Like, would you deal with that on Facebook, or would you just let it roll?
Hamish?
There's a form of thinking in this. Arguably, there could be lots of things that are said on social media. What we end up finding, we're very careful to monitor activity. We take obvious attacks to persons, profanity, and those kind of things we do remove. We're careful not to try and start labeling stuff as misinformation or disinformation. Oftentimes, you'll see folks comment and correct that. We don't necessarily step into that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ruben.
The other issue in regards to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, is capacity. We could have a team of people spending all day on social media responding to all sorts of stuff, and it's simply not productive. And often, as Ruben says, it gets corrected by other members of the community anyway. And blatant untruths are often in the eye of the beholder. Like your blatant untruth will not necessarily be your neighbour's. So it's very hard to engage in that world and do it productively.
Roger, question or something further?
I was just going to make a comment that if it's not the right time, I'm happy to withdraw.
Right,
I was just going to, in regards to 4.4 that several councillors have mentioned, it does say it's recommended that elected members advise the communications team of any media interactions. And I too would like the opportunity to make a comment if I need to, but it's a no surprises policy. I would hate to be sitting in the CEO's chair or the mayor's chair and finding one of my councillors made some blatant remark, however accurate he may be, but I'd like to know about it, not to stop him or her, but just to know about it.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation of Councillor Kairos to second. Or the question.
Yes, I second, Mr. Mayor.
And floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I congratulate the Chief Executive and the appropriate staff for introducing a time requirement for staff to respond to community and media requests within a specified time, and requiring all external correspondence from staff to the community to be signed off by an individual as opposed to a team. If those councillors that have heard me quiz the Chief Executive at times over this since I've been here, I think it's a very good move, and I believe we should vote in favour of this policy, communications policy, because with this added adjustments, I think it makes the policy a full policy, not just a half policy. Well done, thank you. I recommend it to the councillors.
The councillors also agree as the move of the motion. This will probably save a few letters to my inbox as to non-responses. So if this can help, which I think it will be excellent. So we're going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We might just park the mayor's report for the moment and go to the new staff and long-serving staff. Sarah, or is it Jim? Welcome, Jim. And then we'll break for a cup of tea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today we have a number of new starters and 2 service milestones to acknowledge. I'll start with the new starters. I would ask that as I call out their name, each of them stand up so that everyone knows who we're talking about. So first of all, we have James Hope. James is our new curator art. He's working in Sharon's team at the Art Gallery Museum. James joined us from Whanganui, where he was working in the award-winning Sargent Gallery. Our second new start is Grace Bolton. Grace is an information management officer working within Gordon's team. She joined us from the Ashburton Hospital, where she was working in a similar role. Of note, Grace's sister has also worked at council previously.
Welcome, Grace.
Prince Alex. Prince is our projects engineer. He's working in the infrastructure services team and at the moment working with Hernando and the operations group. He joined us from the Waimakariri Council.
Welcome, Prince.
Suzanne Bensdorp is our stockwater administrator. She's working within obviously the stockwater team at Open Spaces for Ian. Suzanne has a wealth of knowledge and experience within the district and in administration. Of note, Suzanne's partner also worked for council previously.
Welcome
Definitely no nepotism. Yeah. We've got a family going on. I'll now move on to our service recognitions, and today we have 2 people with long service to recognise. I would ask that when I read out your name, if you move up to Hamish to receive your acknowledgement and gift. So we'll start off with Michelle Hydes. Michelle is an important part of our commercial property team and has passed her 5-year service milestone in early November. Michelle was originally hired as our commercial systems officer, but due to her wealth of experience within the property industry, it became apparent very early on that she was able to take on more responsibility. Michelle formed a dynamic duo with Kelly Bissett, and between the 2 of them, they were able to solve some of the property issues within the district, namely the EPH and the airport. Michelle is currently employed as one of our property officers, a role in which she is knowledgeable, efficient and thorough, and is highly regarded within her team and the organisation. Michelle, on behalf of council, thank you for your hard work on behalf of the district, and congratulations on your 5-year anniversary. Our second service recognition today is Ian Hyde, and today we celebrate a significant milestone for Ian, being his 10 years with ADC. He joined ADC as a senior district planner on the 28th of November 2011, bringing with him both overseas and onshore experience, having worked in the UK in a number of planning team roles and the acting district planning manager in Timaru. Ian was our senior planner for a period of 2 years until he took up the role of district planning manager in April 2013. Ian is also involved in civil defence, and this is a bit of a surprise, as the planning function manager, and is well respected within the whole of ADC. Ian is a strategic thinker, is extremely knowledgeable, and can always be relied on for sound advice or to share a light-hearted moment that he's found on Facebook, YouTube or TikTok. Ian, on behalf of the council and ratepayers alike, thank you and congratulations on your 10 years of service to ADC in the district. We hope there are many more to come.
Well done to the, and welcome to the new staff, and well done to the 5 and 10 year service to the council. Well done. We might break now for a cup of tea so we can have a chat with you, and councillors will come back after 3:15, and got the Mayor's report, the annual report, and we've got RDR coming as well. So break now for a cup of tea, thanks. Welcome back, councillors. Item number 16, the adoption of the annual report on page 11. We have the report in front of us. Paul, all the staff here to talk to it. Obviously, later than the 3rd of October, which we were generally timeline we work to, but that's Audit's problem, not ours, and because of their staff availability. Paul, shall we hand over to you to present the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have got it finally over the line. There's been some frantic work done on both sides to get it here. The audit report is a clear audit opinion other than a emphasis of matter, and the emphasis of matter is regarding the Three Waters issue. So that's, I think every council would have got that emphasis of matter in the audit report. We sent you out last week a draft annual report. There's a number of small changes. There's a couple of significant changes that have gone through in the last couple of days. One of them is $1.3 million. That was revenue has been reduced by 1.3 million and assets have been reduced by 1.3 million. That was a couple of vested assets that we had recognised when we prepared the annual report, but the Section 224 certificate had not been issued, and by 30 June, so audit took the view that because the Section 224 hadn't been issued by 30 June, we shouldn't have recognised the revenue or the assets, so we backed that out. There was a couple of changes to the commitments note. We were brought in a couple of more commitments, and other than that, we just tidied up a few corrections that needed to be done. So we will get you out another final version in the next few days, and what I thought I would do is probably put out in the memo some notes too, drawing your attention to some of the key aspects if you haven't picked them up from the draft. And the last thing is the eagle-eyed people who may have seen them when the draft came out that the balance sheet actually didn't balance. And that came about because Audit were desperate to get another version to start checking when we were halfway through a correction. And so when we ran the balance sheet, it picked up one half but not the other. So you can rest assured that the final version does have a balance sheet that balances. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Questions, comments, councillors? I just have one. It's on page 37 of the report, and it's not numbers, it's just words. It talks about the Water Race Network Advisory Group. It says there's a number of challenges to work through, how to pressurise a small amount of water that's required for stock water only during the winter months. Stock require water of all months. Is that a fact how they've said it, or is it a typo?
So my understanding is that the issue is delivering the stock water when there's no irrigation water in the pipes. So during the summer there's all the irrigation water which supplements the stock water. So during the winter months there's only the stock water in the pipes.
Oh yeah, during the summer months there'll be irrigation, stock water in with the irrigation water.
Yes.
That's, as long as it says that as well, that's fine. Yeah. Yep. Councillors, any questions? Do you want Paul to read the report? Or? The 214 pages, I mean. Councillor Falloon?
If there are no questions, I would just move the recommendation that the Council adopts the audited 2020-2021 annual report for the Ashburton District Council. I note from the audit report we completed our work on the 15th of December 2021 today, and that is the same date that they're giving their report, funnily enough. But in doing so, I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate the accounting team at ADC here, who have worked with the Audit Office in order to complete the audit in time for today's meeting. I think that's amazing because not only are the Audit Office under-resourced, our own accounting department is slightly under-resourced too, so I think they've done particularly well.
Councillor Cameron, are you seconding?
Yes, I am.
Yep. And I'll also endorse what Councillor Falloon says. It's a huge task to get. Pointing down the line, it's a huge task to get to where you got to today, and albeit late, not because of yourselves though. And no sooner have you finished this, you've started the annual plan already. So, yeah, your department has a huge role to play in council, and we'd like to thank you for that, either end of it, the reporting and the planning. So, thank you for that, Hamish.
Mr Mayor, in adding my comments of thanks and congratulations, can I also acknowledge the strategy and policy team who work with the finance team to pull the annual report together. So the cross-team effort to get this to where we are today is very much appreciated by everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, remiss of me. The one person does the numbers, the other does the words. So it's a combined effort. Thank you all. Well, it's all council that contributes to it, but some more than others. So thank you very much for that. I'll put the motion if there's no further discussion. All in favour, please say aye. Get carried. Thank you very much. Mayor's report, page 130. Just one alteration there, the 12th of December, the refugee afternoon tea. I went there but never found them. They've moved venues apparently, but so I tried to attend but didn't. Everything else was as is. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've got a question. I was unable to come to the Zoom meeting with Grant Robertson and Joe Luxton. Did you find anything else fresh, or how did you go?
Major thing that came out of it, I think, and others could also assist, is the 17 questions we asked, we never got answers to, that he said he would get the answers for us that we offered to those questions and get them back to us. Haven't seen them as yet. Basically, on the Three Waters, he agreed to disagree with us, but it was good dialogue with them. Yeah. The other councillors like to add anything further? It was good to connect with the Grant and talk to him. We shared our concerns. He understands them, but there's no movement. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I found it pretty much the same. Grant Robertson is superb at answering questions. There's absolutely no doubt about that, but the government is very adamant that it's going to happen. I know they've delayed passing the legislation till the new year, but I think listening to our comments and the comments from Timaru District in particular, there's a big lack of trust now between councils and the government, and the manner in which Minister Mahuta mandated that before the end of the discussion and consultation period, I thought showed severe arrogance, and I expect better than that from a Minister of the Crown of my country. And so I was very disappointed with that, but Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson was very polite, very friendly, answered every question, but as the Mayor says, they're just going to disagree with us.
Councillor Wilson.
You pretty much confirm everything that Roger said, and he certainly does. Grant does answer your questions at least. I mean, sometimes you feel like it's political speak, but sometimes it's not. And he did definitely apologise, because I brought up about the no response to the questions, not only for ourselves but all the other councils. And he did seem to be quite apologetic and appeared to not know that. I thought. Maybe I'm gullible and he did know, but I did pick up at the end, because I mentioned that trust factor again too, and I noticed Joe Luxton confirmed right near the end of the meeting that trust and taking away the fear was something she took note they do need to work on. But I felt it was worthwhile sitting in on it.
Yeah,
sorry, just commenting on that response to our feedback. I note there was a message, I think this morning or yesterday, from the Three Waters reform people moving into transition, acknowledging that no councillor had direct answers yet, but they were working on that response inside DIA, and that we would expect that early in the new year. So the the concern at not having had a response from many councils, or all councils, has been heard, and we can look forward to a response in the new year.
Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, just a question. Was that meeting you had with Robertson, was that before or after that the news had come out that Mahuta had mandated this thing back in June?
After. We've written here the date was the 2nd of December. It was mandated in before then, November.
I think the council is referring to the fact that information that suggested the decision might have been made a little bit earlier.
Oh, sorry, I've got you. No.
Yeah, and I think that knowledge or allegation came after the Robertson meeting.
That's right. Yep. Yep. It wasn't discussed at the meeting because we didn't know. Yep. Okay, so I'll move to receive the Maria's report. Second up.
I'll second.
Councillor Wilson. Any further discussion? Right. Put the motion on favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Final item today is RDR. And Tony Richard, welcome. Come up to the front, and you're here to talk to us about. You sent us a letter around RDR and MA. So, take us through that, please.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank you for letting us come along today. It's been a while, if ever, since RDR's actually been before full council. Tony would like to, he's got a small presentation just to perhaps give you a bit of background so that you can understand the issue at hand and where we want to take you. So I'll pass over to Tony McCormick, our CEO.
Well, welcome, Tony. You're welcome to sit. And you'll be aware that this meeting is live streamed, so we're in public.
Yep, that's fine.
So you can watch it at home again tonight if you wish.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Just pull the microphone across to you, be with Tony. There we go. That's good. Yep.
Okay, so is everyone okay with viewing the screens? Obviously, you've worked through this. What specifically has brought us along this afternoon is we are seeking approval from all our shareholders, of which council is one of four, for a reallocation of water that we have consent and is fully contracted. And what I want to do, it is very brief, but I will take the opportunity on the basis that there may be some councillors who are not as familiar with the Rangitata diversion race physically, because just understanding what we're doing here is based on some physical aspects of the scheme. So the presentation, I'll just give a brief scheme description, talk about water allocation and the contracts, and then this concept of constrained water. It's something that we've only really come up with, I guess, to explain our way around what we're trying to do here, but it's quite a good term. What it is we're proposing and that we have sought council approval for, or shareholder approval, and then specifically the request. So the scheme is not, you won't have to follow the mouse too much, but this is a shot of the Canterbury Plains. I think we've got Ashburton down here. So the scheme runs from south to north, takes water out of the Rangitata River and delivers it across the plains and can flow all the water down to the Rakaia. So up at what we call Klondike, up the top here, we have a consent allowing us to take 30.7 cumecs of water in, and it can all end up down at Highbank, which is the power station owned by Trustpower down here. So we can bring in 30.7 we can't actually get it all through, that's part of this presentation, but the key features, the intake up there. There's another power station here at Montalto, we call that, just a small one, in line. The other feature, I guess, is that we do have an intake at the South Ashburton, so we can bring in more water there. Consent allows us 7.1, but they're sort of co-joined consents. Our total intake, or maximum take, is 34.7, so about 35 cumecs. So with that water, if we look at the irrigation season, we put up to 17 cumecs to what used to be Mayfield Hynes, we call it Mayfield Hynes line, up to 5 cumecs into the Valletta scheme, the Valletta line of MHV water scheme, and up to 13 QMEX into Ashburton Lyndhurst. So they're the sort of three traditional, they were three separate shareholders, of course. MH and MHV is now combined into one company. The other one, just to point out, is stock water. The main stock water supply under this construct, so this as a shareholder, the main delivery for stock water is at a place once again called Klondike, but it's between 200 and 300 QMEX, and that drops into a stock water distribution race and then is distributed through this area through here. Of note today, MAR, now I haven't actually gone to any detail of MAR. I've made a presumption that people are sort of reasonably familiar. Managed Act for Recharge is what we're talking about. So the trust, HH Wet, established and that program is transitioning from a trial period into a full commercial operation. In fact, I just got note this morning of the consent. The trust now has the consent for kind of your half QMEC of water. So that was an assignment or change across. The original MAR pilot at Lagmore was via the Valletta scheme. Now there's quite a bit of water can go down through the Mayfield Hydes scheme. And also of note, this is what was called the Near River Recharge Site at South Hydes. We can distribute the water as required. It's all done by water orders, etc. That's the picture, I guess, in the irrigation season. And when we're not irrigating, the schemes are obviously turned off. The stock water continues, and the water flows right through, and is 100% generation in the winter season. Just water allocation. I'm really just going to focus on our consent, while our total consent is about 35 QMEX, and just show how that is allocated through the year. So if we think about 35 QMEX and look at a year, our year is divided into two seasons: an irrigation season, which runs from September through to May. So we're well into our irrigation season now. That's an 8-month season. From May to September is what we call a generation season. So there's 4 months in that season. Just to explain what happens here. So we have stock water, as I say, about 300, up to 300 litres a second. Highest priority, always delivered first, I guess. In the irrigation season, we will have irrigation, and typically, I mean, that varies. Like right at the moment, that blue line would be just a sliver above your stock water line. I don't think we're doing any irrigation. You'll be glad to hear that. And anything that's not left out of that total allocation is used for generation. As I say, the amount of irrigation can vary. So if we have particularly wet, like we are now, this blue line will be well down here. We'll have lots of generation. If it's a particularly dry season, that line can move up. Generation in the irrigation season can vary between 20% and 50% of the water used. It's never zero, and it's never 100%, but so that varies around. And this water, the term tends to be shoulder water, but you can imagine at the start of the season, often we're not irrigating at the end of the season, so it's a bit of a bell curve type allocation. So if we move beyond May, once again, we continue to deliver stock water, but all of the water in that period is assigned and contracted for generation. The problem, or the issue we have, or the opportunity, in fact, that we have, is that we can't physically deliver all that water through our scheme. And next slide, I'll explain that. So there's a sliver of water up here which we can't bring through and use for generation. And that's what we have called constrained water. So is that okay? So 2 seasons, fully allocated. I think that's the important thing. There's always a use for the water, except we have this little bit of water that we can't physically use for the contracted use, which is generation.
Only just explain, why is it constrained?
This one.
You come into it.
Yep. So I'll just try and explain how it is. So this is a map and a cross-section of the scheme, not quite the same scale, but so we've got the intake up at Klondike. And then the key thing is that we, as well as the big open channel that you all see, what you don't see is all these other structures where we take water under the rivers. We've got a large siphon up at Surrey Hills. And the whole scheme, when it was designed and built fantastically in 1930, it had a design flow of 10,000 cusecs. Now, there's probably more people in this room that know what that means than me. I turned metric when I was 7 years old or whatever it was. 10,000 cusecs works out to be about 28 cumecs. So the capacity of the scheme is about 28 cumecs. That's as much water as we can ever deliver down the end. And as I've said, we've got a consent that in total gives us 35, but in particular the one up at Klondike with 30.7. So I'll just put those same structures. There's 9 structures altogether along the way. And of significance, the first structure here is at South Hydes, where we take the water under the South Hydes. So this section of race is all open race, and we do have the capacity to deliver about 34 cumecs actually. So there's more capacity in there than through the rest of the scheme. So 28 cumecs beyond it, and we can access 30.7, and essentially the difference between those two is what I'm calling constrained water. So right now, no generation, say, Rangitata River's well up. We could bring in 30.7, but we won't get it past South Hydes. It'll spill. So I guess what we're doing, I'll just put those on the bottom just so it's sort of consistent and you can sort of see where we are. What we have is this difference here, and the two opportunities, Mayfield Hydes line at the moment and the Near River recharge site, we could deliver water to it. So the concept is we could bring in that extra little bit of water, deliver some of it to here and some of it to the Mars site there, and have 28 cumecs left going down to the power station. So yeah, just constrained water, it's between 2 and 3 cumecs, so it's that 28 to 30.7, that little bit of water. It currently, or in the winter, it can stay in the river. If the river goes on restriction and we can't bring in 30.7, obviously we lose this opportunity, and that quite often happens in winter. But at the moment we can't bring it in, but we could bring it in if we could drop it off before South Hydes. We could use it before the South Hydes site. So that's essentially the proposal, I guess, is to use this for MAR. Now, around this, the consent and shareholders and various interests are the water supply agreements where we are contracted. They have, they're quite simple and very clear, and I'll just sort of run through those. So there is water supply agreements that RDR holds with each of the shareholders. The two irrigator ones are obviously identical, except for the amount, and the ADC and Trustpower ones each vary because of the different use. The water supply agreements specify a proportionate amount of water, so MHV get 48%, Ashburton Lyndhurst get 20-something%, and then so depending on how much water, that's how we allocate it. After stock water is allocated, so they specify how much water and what it's to be used for, and the only thing they specify that any of these parties can use water for is stock water, irrigation, and hydrogeneration, no MAR. Again, all the consented water is fully allocated via the water supply agreements, and stock water always has priority. This is really just a repeat. In irrigation season, irrigators have the next priority, and the residual goes to generation. In the generation season, after stock water, all water is allocated for generation. So the constrained water is actually Trustpower's water. It's there if they could use it. The bottom line is they can't use it. We can't deliver it to them. They can't use it. So we're saying, well, give it back to us and we'll reassign it to MAR. After quite a lot of discussion, Trustpower have agreed to do that. They've said, okay, we'll do that. 3-year trial, which is fine, which is good. Let's just see how this runs. So they have agreed to forego their rights and give it back to us. What the board has thought prudent is to go to all the shareholders and say, are you guys okay with this concept? I'd be very surprised, especially the shareholder, the council, would have any well, maybe reservations, I don't know, but wouldn't want to support this. I mean, MAR is generally about community good. It's already regulated, you know, it's already in the plans. So we will have a commercial contract with the trust to supply this constrained water, so there'll be a water supply agreement. We will make some revenue out of it. There is a bit, you know, there's some gain on that. I mean, there's access to the race and such like. We are finalising that. And as I've said, we're just seeking the approval of all the shareholders to this proposal, since it requires a variation to the water supply agreement with Trustpower. The variation, of course, being they will forego some of their sole rights in the generation season and the irrigation season, actually, because as I say, right now we're probably in a constrained water situation. And that they are okay, we use it for MAR. We are currently getting a consent, because even our consent does not allow us to use any of our water for MAR, but we're dealing with that through what we call a supplementary consent. So we're lining up all the ducks, if you like, you know, the regulations, the permissions. Here's an opportunity, I guess, and certainly the trust have had their eye on this for quite some time. They've been able to tell me very clearly how much water is there and when it's available, so they've obviously got their eye on it. It's a good opportunity. So in quite simple terms, I've written to Hamish, just sort of outlining, I guess, the last slide really, last couple of slides, the concept, and sought approval of the council. And Hamish, I'm not sure formally what the process is, but I'm sort of over to you to what the process would be.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our intention would be to prepare a report for council to consider and make a decision.
Okay.
Our invitation, if you like, to you and Chairman Richard to come to this meeting was, it's not an easy report to write from scratch or minimal understanding. We thought the better way was to invite you here for, good to have you in the room anyway, but to invite you here to discuss the matter or to inform councillors. And then the report that we will write, which will go to council's February meeting.
Right.
Which I'm sure will recommend that this shareholder approves the use of the water in the manner in which you propose. But that will be a council decision. So they'll consider the report. They'll have the background now of this presentation and the knowledge of any questions they might be about to ask. And they'll receive a report and consider that matter. I think our meeting's the 2nd or 3rd of February for a decision.
Right. Okay. I think, thanks for that explanation.
Good. Thanks, Tony. I think that was your last slide, was it? We can go to questions.
Just the last slide. I'm into.
You have another PowerPoint too. Yeah. Yeah. Just got a question from Stuart.
Yes, thank you. My question is, was it correct that you today got consent from ECAN or whoever that 2.3 can be used for MAR?
No, it wasn't, Stuart. Sorry to mislead. It was Brett Painter just forwarded me a copy of the consent the trust now holds for the half cubic of X stock water that the council has assigned to the trust. So you're probably aware of that. It was advice for me. Yeah.
Will somebody have to apply to ECAN for the 2.3 to be altered to MAR?
No, I mentioned we're the trust on our behalf, but it will be a consent that we hold. We will hold a supplementary use consent, because our main take consent is somewhat unusual in that it's the use of it is not specified as a condition. It's an unusual one. The consent is written to take and use water for these purposes, so it's quite difficult to vary that. And we've agreed that we will have a consent to use whatever water is available. In fact, we could assign a lot more if our shareholders so sought. But it's to use any of that water that we take in at Klondike or South Ashburton actually for MAR, for the purpose or the activity known as MAR. So still to cross that little bridge. It's been to ECAN once, but we're well down the track with getting the appropriate consent for that. It won't specifically talk about constrained water or anything like that. It's any water under our 30.7 consent. Yeah.
Good. Further questions, councillors? If not, thank you very much for that presentation. You have another presentation there on
it was simply opportunity, and if there's a willingness, I have. It was really just update on.
Just while you're following that, Tony, the next one, I'll have a couple of questions that come up, but one question is, are Whenua have a view on the constrained water at this stage?
We've really talked with them about use of water for MAR, so not specifically this concept, but so no. Good.
Okay,
good point.
Yeah, Angus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is actually to the Chief Executive. Through you, can he please put this report in whatever report he makes to Council in February? Put these slides in.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. No more questions on the constrained water, thanks, Tony, but you've got an update on the floods and fish screen, which is a couple of one's an exciting project anyway.
Yes, these are really just, it's nearly all pictures, I think. So it was just an update on how the May floods impacted us, and then look at the fish screen project. So May, no need to tell you, a very extreme event. We did actually get water coming into the race, so flowing over land into the race, and that really did cause us some angst. There was some slight overtopping where we couldn't control it enough to prevent it overtopping, and this was mainly around Montalto area, but the overtopping was very gradual over a very long embankment, and no sort of damage to the landowner. What we did sustain was quite a lot of damage at 3 river crossings. I described those 9 structures we have. All 3 of them have been pretty bashed up, basically. Estimated repair about 2 million. I'd probably be incrementing that by 1 after some work this week. And we are insured, but there is a 250k excess applicable for that, so it will cost us. So this is the North Ashburton. The canal comes from here, and we have these armoured structures. So over the back of this is the canal, and under the river is the siphon. And you can see here it's just smashed it off, basically. The problem with that, if that erodes, the canal would fail, basically. So we're currently redoing for the second time since the floods some temporary armouring around this area until we effect a full repair. So this is actually on the right bank. The river kicked right across. Again, I'm sure you're aware, the river's just changed their course like you wouldn't believe. It used to happily go right down the middle here, came into this one and headed across and knocked the nose off this end. Taylor's Stream, a very voracious little stream, and it's moved all its debris, just sort of smashed up against it, undercut all of this. So all of this is completely damaged, basically. And you may recognise it's been repaired once already. You can see the difference in the two sides there. This is South Ashburton. We have an intake. This damage. So that bit there is actually here, and the damage was actually that the river came around and hit us from behind, basically. So it jumped out well behind us and came at us. What I'd like to point out here, and again, I'm sure you're aware, the main river channel, we used to bring it over here because this is our intake. The river would come along here and head down here. This is the river channel, and on Monday morning, all the water was going down this side, so it had completely jumped out and come through here. And standing here, I can remember it, standing here looking down the river, I could not believe that you'd ever get water down through there. It was about 2 metres. The riverbed had been, the gravel was about 2 metres higher than the river level at that stage. So the amount of gravel, and I'll just point out a little speck here. You might, I'll show you, I think the next slide's got that. Sorry, wrong way. Yes, our drag light, this was on the morning of, and this was on the eve of. It took about 30 metres of land, including where this thing was sitting. So our old drag line ended up a crumpled mess in the river. Quite sad for those of us that like old machinery. So fish screen replacement, just to sort of move on. We did defer the commissioning from to May next year. We originally had intended to have it up and running now by September, but one thing or another, we decided this time last year that no, we needed to roll it out to the end of the irrigation season rather than trying to squeeze it in beforehand. We've had fantastic performance from the contractor. It's led by Doug Hood, Grant Hood's, sorry, showing my heritage. Grant Hood and main subcontractor Smith Cranes from Christchurch, who have been an important contractor for you guys, I think, recently with bridges. And the other outstanding thing has been AWMA, who are the suppliers, manufacturers and suppliers out of Australia. We're currently on track, 17.2 million. It's a lot of money for what we're achieving, but it does continue. It does allow us to continue to operate. I'll just flick that would belong to somewhere else really. So yeah, very early days here, shifting dirt. So just about all Hood contracting here, Grant Hood contracting. But once again, even at this stage, you're starting to say, what are we building here? So yeah, we were able to. So lots of concrete, Smith Cranes excelling in precast concrete and construction and erection. This is a fish view off the screen. I like this one, just sort of starts to give you a sense of the magnitude of it. Bird's eye view quite early on. So this is the existing canal, and eventually the canal will come in through the screen here, through the screens, and continue on and connect back up like this. Sorry. Mayfield show, we had the opportunity to put a screen on show, and I think a lot of people were impressed, I guess. These things are enormous. This is one during test over in Aussie. So we've got, this is getting more current. We've got the what we call the retrieval screens erected there, installing the screens onto that. And I put this picture, and this is actually a computer generated picture that we had, 2 years ago probably, saying, well, this is what your scheme might look like, or this is what your scheme should look like. And so just sort of hold that thought, if you like, because there we go. I think they did a pretty good job. So if you get up there now, that's what you will see. We've got 7 of these screens. They're individual screens, all in a row, cylindrical screens. And then there's another stretch of flat panel screen. Kind of hard to, even on that shot, to appreciate the magnitude, I think. I've been a bit something with my camera angles, but yeah, those are pretty big. 2.1 metres diameter. Yeah. I didn't include that one. Look, if you can appreciate that they're bolted that way, yes. I might just flick back to here. So these are mesh screens, 2mm slots, circumferential slots, right around. You have the cylinder, and the slots are right around. Those cylinders will turn, and the water, passes through there and exhausts out the back. These things are sitting sort of on their side. So yeah, they're stainless steel, very fine pitched bars that create a grill that the water goes through, but the fish cannot. So 2mm, sort of no fish will get through that, or none of the species that are up there. And then, so if the fish can't get through, how do they fall back, or what happens to them with the water flow? Good point. While most of the water comes through the screens and comes back into the race, there's a whole channel that goes right through this. So there's about 3 cumecs left with all the fish in it, and they are sent on their way back to the river. A return channel, yeah. So this is looking at the back of it. So the cylindrical screens are over the other side of this wall up the top, and we've got this large wall of. So this is again grills and screen for the water to come through. And yeah, that's a shot just from last week, actually. Just I think sort of shows once again. So this is on the exhaust side. These are the exhaust ports of those 7 screens. So all the water will be coming out through here. This will all be underwater. The water level sits just about 1 metre below the top of the wall. Yeah, and very much my intention to that we will have the opportunity to have groups like the council. I mean, Stuart was up there a couple of weeks ago, But yes, we will build it, and then we do actually have a stand down period, probably at least 2 months before we do that work to join it up with the canal, to cut into the canal. We've got to shut the whole scheme down for a couple of weeks to do that work, so we're waiting to the end of the irrigation season. So it's definitely my intention that we will set it up. We need to make safe access for people, but you'll be able to walk through that, and I'd envisage, you know, a group like this would be of some interest to see that.
Also the public as well.
Yeah, I'll
Also
certainly
the
have
public
public
as well.
days. I mean, the other thing that's been emerging too is interest from schools and you know, sort of science project stuff. So, which is great. Yeah, because I mean, just it's, you know, it's by far the biggest in New Zealand. There is nothing close to it, and globally, I'd suggest it's probably, it would almost certainly rank in the top 10, if not higher, just as far as the size of what we're trying to do or will do out there.
Thanks, Tony, and take questions, councillors. But Richard and I are directors of RDR, and we've been talking about it for 5 years, or probably Richard a bit longer, 6, 7 years. So to get it to the stage of completion, or just about completion, is a huge milestone. And I think when we first started talking about it, it was only going to be $4 or $5 million, I think. But when it was all designed and costed 17, but looking at it, it's a huge project. It's a huge amount of water. Biggest water take in New Zealand, I think it might be, for irrigation.
Despite Central Plains' claims that they're the biggest scheme in the South Island, this is the biggest scheme in the South Island.
So, councillors, any questions for Richard or Tony? Or Richard, do you want to make any comments? You haven't said a lot yet, but if you wanted to.
I think with the fish screen, we want to just acknowledge the contractors who have done it because the price is still the price that we got offered, you know, back when we signed the contract. So they've gone the whole way through COVID and have pretty much performed to expectation. That's an Ashburton contractor too, so I think we need to acknowledge them with this project.
Yeah, they've done very well and easy to work with too. I think Tony and his people have found. Yeah, Stuart.
I've got quite a high-powered project management team across that, and they've all said what a dream run we've had because of the way they like to work. So it's very complimentary.
Stuart,
this is obviously the state of the art. It's the first one in New Zealand with it. Do you think Bahu, Chertsey, Central Plains, so on, are going to be caught up? And you can see obvious why the District Council would like to piggyback off your fish screen. If we had to do anything like that at all with any of our intakes, it's completely impractical.
Sure, it is scalable. At the Mayfield show, we had a little one from AWMA, so it is scalable. There is one other, Kuria Duntroon have got one of these hanging off the back of the dam. So there's been one in there for a couple of years. But your question about where is this sort of guiding or leading or dragging the rest of the industry, a very vexed question. Especially just about all those ones that you mentioned have infiltration galleries or rock bunds. So, you know, they don't have a structure, and for them to subsequent to retrofit something like this was difficult to imagine, let alone, you know, be practical, just because of the hydraulics that they've built it for don't sort of allow for this. ECAN have certainly said, you know, the original concept here was a rock bund, and that didn't make it through the first step, and they continue to say that they do not support those. So there's a number, you know, that are looking very warily, I guess, at what we've got here. It's a tricky question, but certainly, I mean, I never did get to Craycroft, but it would have been possible to do something like this. But yeah, that would be expensive. You know, just Kuria Duntroon's was over $1 million for 2.7 cubics or something. So it's not impossible, but you've got to have the right conditions. We're just so lucky. We're lucky. We've already got a canal. We've got a channel. We're off the river. That you couldn't build this on the river. You could imagine it would just get smashed. So we're lucky that we can put a facility like this off the river. Yeah, and you know, I know there was a fish screen in the South Ashburton, which was quite innovative, but I think that got that's no longer. And the May floods were just excessive, but that's always the risk. But there is a working party. I'm part of that with ECAN, and trying to find, you know, practical solutions that are pragmatic, but rock buns and infiltration galleries just aren't making it past go. So when their issue will be for renewal, consent renewal, that they probably will be forced to do that. Next one off the blocks, North Otago down at Low Waitaki. Their consent's probably first one up, and they have a rock bund.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Rawlinson.
Well, a comment, if I may, just say well done. I can remember, Tony, you were newly in your role and sitting in an AGM out at the hotel, and the $17 million was being mooted, and everyone was horrified, thinking how could it ever cost so much? So to see it and see that now, I think is an amazing piece of work.
Yes, thank you. And I think what none of us added, you know, could put that context of what's 17 million what's it needed for, and you see the size of this facility, you realise if this is what's needed to do the job, then those are the sort of dollars. Yeah,
that's right, and you can now see why it cost that much. Thanks, well done.
This is farmers doing their bit for the environment, which they do all the time.
Yeah, there has been no external funding. This is all shareholder funded.
Yep.
So the council has contributed in their way to this, and will continue to. It's essentially doubled the fees. The fees we charge all our shareholders will double because of this for the next 25 years. Yeah. So it's very significant.
You did apply for PGF funding, but was turned down. The shovel ready.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah, shovel ready.
But was turned down.
But we were already underway, and didn't quite qualify.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming in and showing us that, and to talk about the constrained water. So we'll have a report and decision back to you in February, which good.
And obviously, Hamish, happy to help with that report. I mean, hopefully it's easy to do now.
Appreciate it, thank you. Yep, and we look forward to the site visit as well, to be on site and show the councillors what has been there before it gets filled up with water. Which
it'll be after February, March, April is when we'll be doing
sounds good. So thank you very much, both of you. Well done, have a Merry Christmas. Councillors, that takes us to the end of all our business. I think, Philippa, we've got everything done. I'll just say Merry Christmas. The year has been a year of different year, isn't it? We've had COVID, we've had floods, we've got new buildings, we've finished the CBD, we've got a lot achieved. We've done we've done a fair bit. So well done to you all and the staff. The executive, you don't do it all. You've got a lot of people underneath yourselves who do the mahi, the hard work. So thank you all, and we will see you, if not before, at the next official council meeting, February the 5th, I think it is. So I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.